Hi, everyone. My name is Elliot, and I am part of the customer success team at Swivl. And today we'll be talking a little bit about the edTPA video submission. And with me today, I have three wonderful guests. If we could just go and introduce ourselves, starting with Amy.
Hi, I'm Amy Hickman, currently serving as a site coordinator coach at Texas Tech University. Also, I am the edTPA coordinator.
All right, great, thank you. And then LaChan.
Hi, everyone. My name is LaChan Hannon. I am the certification officer at TCNJ, the College of New Jersey School of Education, and I'm also the edTPA coordinator.
All right, great, thank you. And then finally, Shelby.
Hey, yes, I'm Shelby Landrum, and I created the YouTube channel and Teachers Pay Teachers resource called edTPA the Easy Way. I came to teaching through an alternate route to certification for career changers and went through a program there for certification and felt like I got really great support from my program. But even then, doing edTPA, I felt like there was still so much to be shared. And so from that, after I tore edTPA handbook apart from top to bottom before I submitted mine, then after I passed, I got a score of 62 out of 75 on middle grades math. And so then I started the YouTube channel because I was getting questions from my fellow cohort members, some who had not passed, and I had friends that would be taking it later. And so I just started that, and it kind of blew up from there. So that's me.
All right, great. Thank you so much for joining me today. So I just wanted to check in with everybody. First of all, I know we talked about this just a little bit before, but given that right now we are in a situation, so as of right now, there'll be a recording of this, obviously, and so it's March 30th, 2020, and we're in the middle of the COVID-19 situation, and so that's obviously affected us in different ways. And I wanted to just just ask us how this has been affecting us and whether it's affected our program or the way we're living right now. And so I guess this time we'll maybe start with Shelby.
Sure thing. So I am not currently in the classroom as I have two toddler boys, one a little over 2 and one a little under. Mm-hmm. But we've been at home. Schools around the area have been teaching remotely for the last 3 weeks. And I still have lots of friends teaching and my family teaching as well. And it's a hard time hearing, the sadness in people's hearts from missing their students and not feeling like they have closure. It is hard, but we are blessed to be home and be safe, and I'm thankful for that.
All right. And then LaChan?
So here in the state of New Jersey, we've also been doing remote learning for the past 3 weeks. As far as K-12 schools go, all of our institutions of higher education are doing online and distance learning as well, many of them through the end of the semester, some of them actually into the summer semester. So that is having a huge impact on our student teachers and our teacher candidates, because some of them are in districts that were already doing some sort of blended learning. They were already using maybe Google Classroom or other platforms. So they've just, they have access and they've been able to fall right in line with what the actual K-12 teachers are doing. And then you have some districts that were not prepared for online learning at all and have sent their students home with papers, in which case, our students are saying, how do I get this done? We're working with the Department of Education. We're talking with all the other institutions to try to, because all the institutions with teacher prep programs are in the same boat. So really, how do we see our students to the finish line? What regulations can be adopted, adjusted, bended, in order to make this work?
Mm. Yeah. And then finally, Amy.
Yeah, so our situation is a lot like LaChan was just describing in West Texas. We have been today for K-12 in this area, we just started our first day of homeschooling, or as my daughter's district calls it, Pirates Learning at Home. They've started a whole platform for it, but it's the same thing with our student teachers. Some were in districts that had Google Classroom and are within districts where the students, the K-12 students, even have a one-to-one iPad or Chromebook to take home. And then one district in our area didn't have any of that in place, and so they're doing the papers. So it's the same type of thing happening here. I would say our student teachers are just continuing to support their mentors as best as they can from home and from a distance. But overall, with Texas Tech, we have our program, we do a year-long student teaching. And so as far as requirements being met with hours and observations, we've actually met that already. So we're safe as far as the Texas requirements for them to graduate. But all of our coursework has been flipped online. We have a distance program, Tech Teach Across Texas, already in place. And so all of our coursework has been adapted to online. So that's been a little bit easier. It's just been the mid-semester and not having K-12 students to work with for some of the assignments. That's made it a little bit challenging. So where the bending comes into place.
Yeah, for sure. That's really great to hear that in terms of like where you're in the course, like things are going to work out. Well, thank you so much for sharing. So we're just going to go into a little bit of housekeeping. So to our participants right now, you'll see that you have a little Q&A box at the bottom. And this Q&A box is where we'd love for you to leave any questions that you have for our panelists. And so there's both the chat and the Q&A, but we'd rather people use the Q&A, and that way we can look through them. They don't get lost in the comments, and we'll be able to answer them in the Q&A section. So it looks a little bit like that where the arrow is pointing right here. And so I wanted to go over a little bit, just some Swivl tidbits before we start the edTPA webinar, asking some questions. Just to talk a little bit about Swivl Live with Zoom for higher ed, we understand that right now a lot of schools are trying to figure out how to share their content or their classroom content online. And one of the great ways to use Swivl would be to broadcast your classroom live with Zoom. And so the advantages of using Swivl Live with Zoom is to be able to answer questions live from students. And so while you're giving your presentation or giving a lecture, you'll be able to answer questions from students, move around freely while recording, screencast your lesson and record yourself at the same time, and finally record with the great audio quality that you get from using Swivl. Let's talk a little bit about edTPA now, just doing a little transition. Some of the requirements for edTPA align perfectly with Swivl and how it can help you out. So some of the requirements include student-teacher engagement. And so one of the ways Swivl can help you is that the candidate can record the best student and teacher interactions with up to 5 microphones, and that way you'll be able to capture that audio quality, capture their audio with high quality. We're looking for evidence of positive classroom environments, and having that ability to move around in the classroom is able to provide that evidence. Timestamp annotations, so these are something that you provide in the comments, and you can actually do that on the Swivl platform in preparation. So as you're recording your lessons, you can leave real-time bookmarks for timestamped annotation, and so while you're in the class, you can leave those bookmarks for you to find later. And finally, we have evidence of subject matter competency. With Swivl, you can customize rubrics for peer collaboration and evaluator review before submission. So this is kind of in preparation for the submission. That's something that can help you out. All right, so that's a little bit about Swivl. And now I would love for our panelists to I'd like to ask some questions to our panelists just to talk a little bit about the edTPA video submission. First of all, I wanted to ask what your role is in the edTPA and what particular responsibilities you have. And so could we start with Amy?
So I serve as the edTPA coordinator. So I'm responsible for continuing our training with all of our site coordinators that are field supervisors that oversee the student teachers, as well as doing boot camps for our teacher candidates to get them into their handbook. So I do all the training for them, and then also all the coordinating for our writing days to give them that time out of the field to come together and complete it and submit is kind of my role within a TPA.
Okay, great, thank you. And then LaChan?
So like Amy, a lot of my responsibility is on training field supervisors. Also, we just started at the end of last year training cooperating teachers so that how they can support students with that TPA, which is so needed. I also do the tech trainings for our students, which don't only talk about, you know, the Swivl equipment themselves, but all the other things and registering for edTPA. And we use live text as a submission portal and how to use that and what are some of the nuances of the requirements. So I do not dig into their students' handbooks. I leave that to faculty. Although I am a former teacher of 15 years, I'm more than capable to do that. But then what would faculty do? So so, but I know it's up to them. You know, it's really up to them to really be pushing that content and what that's supposed to look like. I also run a small team that handles edTPA equipment and the reservations and all of that. And so that's what I do.
All right, great, thank you. And it's really, really cool to hear that you also have that understanding of like what happens in the classroom as well. And then Shelby, could you tell us a little bit more about what edTPA the Easy Way is and what sort of resources you provide for teachers who are, you know, looking to submit their edTPA videos or edTPA in general? Oh, I can't hear you right now.
Oh no.
Hey, yes.
Sorry. The way that I was able to get a grasp on my own submission for edTPA was not only looking at the handbook, but the supplemental document that edTPA gives called Understanding Rubric Level Progressions. And it, while it is a semi-condensed version of the handbook itself, it's still like a 50-page document. And oh, look, there's my face.
Yeah.
I broke this down and only looked at things that would get me either a level 3 score or a level 4 score, because my goal was if I aim high, then surely I'm gonna pass this thing. And so by doing that, I really broke it down and I made myself this 3-page checklist condensed down from 50 pages. That was my my study guide check mark for each of the 15 rubrics. And I made sure that, everywhere it said, this is where the evidence is shown in, task 1, numbers 1A through B. I would make sure that I had that there. And I was just like, I am not going to submit this thing and have to redo it. And so from doing that, I learned how to do that for other handbooks as well, and the Understanding Rubric Level Progressions. So when people started reaching out to me saying, hey, after I was posting YouTube videos about things that I did, then I created my page on Teachers Pay Teachers, and I would have them send me their document Understanding Rubric Level Progressions, and I would do the same thing and break it down and put those up for people as well to save them the time that while they're student teaching, they most likely don't have to break down a 50-page document. And a lot of other people have found it helpful as well to take that to their mentor teacher, because if you give a 50-page document to a mentor teacher and be like, hey, this is what edTPA is and what I am required to do, can I have free reign of your classroom for the next 3 to 5 days? Sometimes, and a lot of people don't have the great support that Amy and LaChan are giving their students, the people that reach out to me. So they're able to take this 3-page document and give that to their teachers and be like, this is what I am being held accountable to and why I really need to do this, this, and this, and have this 3 to 5 day learning segment in the classroom. Because if I don't do these things, I'm not going to pass. And I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, and in Georgia it is a requirement for state certification, and I know it is in so many other states as well. So that's kind of where I got started, and it's really just kind of gone from there. And I'm always just so thrilled to be able to help fellow teacher candidates and teachers do what they want to do.
That's amazing. And I've watched a few of the videos, and like they're super informative, even though I'm not directly involved in edTPA. I just, the way that you were explaining the content was very, very clear and easy to understand. And on that topic, you mentioned that you noticed that a lot of other schools like didn't have the same support that you or Amy or LaChan were giving or given. Could you or any of the other panelists tell us a little bit more about what are the challenges that perhaps your school or other schools may encounter when starting off with edTPA? I guess we'll start on the teacher side. Like, what are the struggles that like the teacher might encounter when going through edTPA?
And
so I'll start with being fresh, because I know y'all are talking about being from Georgia and New Jersey. Wait, New Jersey, correct, LaChan? Mm-hmm. It is not required in Texas yet. So we are actually just completed or still wrapping up year 1 of the pilot. So this was our first year to go at it. So I've learned a whole lot about what to do, what not to do. But as far as the teachers, one of the main obstacles we came across, and I don't know if this is just a West Texas thing, but in our elementary program with TEA wanted us to do the literacy plus task 4 mathematics. I'm not sure if that's what both of your states do. Okay, so whenever it came time to do that literacy part, well, not all of our student teachers were placed in a literacy placement for student teaching, because we have multiple grade levels that are departmentalized. And so it made it very challenging to say, okay, well, we have 3 student teachers in 4th grade on one campus. How am I going to rotate them all through literacy and say, hey, you have to give up your classroom for essentially 9 to 15 days for these 3 student teachers to do it with the kids that they're familiar with. So that has been a challenge that we've learned. And so we are definitely learning how to get a little bit more strategic when we think about where we're doing our placements. That was a big one.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. That definitely sounds like a very interesting problem to overcome. And I'm sure like a lot of other schools might have that problem as well. Are there any other panelists who have any other thoughts?
I think one of the challenges that we encountered was when edTPA became a certification requirement. It was not necessarily a requirement of K-12 to allow the edTPA in their schools. And so we ended up actually losing quite a few partner districts because at the superintendent level, they were saying, you know, we don't want this. This is an extra burden. This is just too much. And, you know, and some of those restrictions have eased, you know, as we get into schools and we explain to them, this is what the role of a mentor teacher is going to be. This is how you can support them, you know, and just as there's greater understanding about what edTPA is and what it's asking them to do. So some of that is eased, but in the very beginning, that was actually a huge, and that was a huge deal. And our placement office, actually, we place between 400 and 450 students a year. And so trying to find that when some of your larger districts are saying, no, we won't even allow you to do edTPA, which also then has ripple effects to alternate route candidates, right? So when you say you're not going to allow edTPA in your district, you're also acknowledging that one, you don't want any student teachers, and two, you don't want any alternate route candidates. So where's your pipeline? And so once we started having those kinds of conversations, you know, the flexibility eased up a little bit.
I see.
And that I've heard from some of my friends who were taking it were when they were placed, and these were people that were in either middle or high school placements, for example, in a math classroom where they've got a very strong content team on the grade level and everything is very standard or across all the classes, you know, of the same subject matter. And so when it came time for them to need to create their own assessment, to create their own lessons and whatever else, it was a very tricky thing for them to navigate. They almost had to say, okay, well, I need to create and give this assessment for edTPA. So like, let's just give it to the students. And I understand if like to have data across the board, if you need all of these things to be the same, then I guess this one group of students will need to take this second test. But that was a really tricky part because especially not having the autonomy over your own classroom as a student teacher, whereas I was an alternate route candidate. So I was actually I was the teacher of my classroom. I was not a student teacher. So I had a little bit more flexibility there, but some of my friends who were in that student teaching role, that can be very challenging as well, especially when your department doesn't understand the edTPA requirements either and doesn't know why you're trying to be more creative or do different things and veer off the path.
I see. So once the teachers are in the classroom and they're sort of starting their video submission process, were there any particular challenges in terms of supporting those teachers or challenges that the teachers faced or maybe you yourself faced, Shelby, when they were in the classroom, perhaps pertaining to equipment or just learning how to record that video?
I'd say for me, I had the just huge blessing that my school's library and my school in general was a pretty tech savvy school. So they had Swivl. I just went to my library technician and was like, hey, I need to do this. What's up? And they had it, and it was amazing. I don't know how to do it without it. But one of the challenges I faced was just figuring out after I had recorded it, how to compress, how to upload it off the iPad, because most of the time in an iPad, it's set to record in at least 1080p, if not higher at this point. So to then have a full length class on an iPad and be able to find a way to upload that to a computer setting and then compress the file to the size that edTPA needs, that kind of technical thing. I did a lot of YouTube research on myself. And so I try and help others with that as well. But I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have the Swivl to use.
And did you hear about using the Swivl through other teachers, or you kind of just did your own research and found out oh, we actually have something called Swivl and that might help out?
I just went to the library. I was like, hi, I know that you guys do your morning show and you do this, that, and the other. I need to record my class for this thing called edTPA. Can you help me? And they're like, I actually think we have a great thing now. I was like, wonderful.
That's awesome. That's really cool to hear. And then I guess on the side of coordination, helping help the students upload videos or help the students get the Swivls in the classroom, were there any particular challenges or maybe things that worked particularly well for you during that process? This aimed towards Amy and LaChan.
I think once we once we developed a reservation system for our swivels and parameters around what that means, who's allowed to take them, how long you're allowed to use them, do we require training before you take them out, which all faculty members were absolutely happy about. Like, yes, you must go to this training before you can touch this equipment. But really just giving them a chance to play with it a little bit. I found the students found that to be really, really helpful, to the point where we actually have some methods classes, some teachers in methods classes, or even a clinical one class where they're starting to use the equipment during that time to record their lessons. So they're actually quite familiar with time stamping, with bookmarking, with setting it up, with what's best, and using a C1 versus a C3 swivel, what's going to work for their classroom. So really just giving them a chance to get their hands on it and work with each other. And so, yeah, that's what's been working well. That coupled with the trainings, doing the training was a huge game changer, along with the reservation system. So, because I think we have maybe 50 swivels, and like I said, 250 students in the fall, another 150 in the spring, and we've got this. So we make it work. We make it work, and the students are still using it to this day because I just logged into their accounts.
That's great to hear. And when did you start doing these trainings, and kind of can you give us a sort of picture into what it might look like for the training session?
Sure. So when I first got to the College of New Jersey, which was in November of 2017, we were in our pilot year. And before then, I had never heard of edTPA. I had heard of edTPA in my PhD program, but I had not, no one really kind of knew what it was going to look like. So when I got to the College of New Jersey, they said, hey, here's this thing, and we need a coordinator. And you're the certification officer. So let's, see how this goes. And those trainings have evolved over the years. So at first they started with just a tech training. And then I go in to do all the boot camps and all the different programs and give a talk about that. And then it turned into, okay, here's what you need to know. Here's really what you need to know in order to get yourself started. So this is a preview of what uploading looks like, and the things that you're going to need. I need you to know where you're going at the end, so you can know what to do in order to prepare yourself. You don't want to get to an upload session, which we host also, and say, oh man, I wish someone had told me how to name my files. Like that. I mean, you just wasted 40 minutes renaming your files. Just trying to calm some of those anxieties. I think one of the things that I'm most proud of with our trainings is that we do surveys after every single training. I have every single student who ever attended a training who filled out the survey, the digital survey while they were there, gave me feedback. And sometimes they were like, we should have spent more time, we should have spent less time, but I always look at that feedback so that I can know what to do for the next round of training, recognizing that it's, every semester is like Groundhog Day, and that you get a whole new batch of students.
Yeah.
So, but that's what we do. We go through what is, registering for edTPA, and if you get this message, you've done it wrong. And, if you get this, what are the high risk and low risk buttons that you're allowed to push? Because that's what my students are most concerned about. Is this red button a high risk button? And, I just try to calm them with energy and with humor and with really just reassuring them. I think that's the most important part of the training, is that it's reassuring them that they're fully capable, that they've been fully prepared, and that they can do it. So
that's really great to hear. I mean, I'm sure a lot of other students would really appreciate that training. I know that on our support side, right before our TPA submissions, there are a ton of support questions that come in, and they're just like, I wish I had the training. But I mean, we obviously help them as much as we can, but when it's that close to the deadline, there's only so much we can do. Yeah, and then I think Amy, you were working on like the team side a little bit.
Yeah, so we've had MOUs with our districts to be recording in the districts for probably 6 or 7 years now. So I know that hasn't been that big of a hiccup for us in that aspect. And then also all of our teacher candidates, when they come in to tech teach, they are issued a iPad, and we used to use the Swivl robot. We just recently stopped, but hopefully we're going to get back on track with that. But yeah, the team side with the cloud, having that Swivl cloud made uploading their videos seamless. This is where I feel like I aged myself. I was scared of technology and trying to coach, 150 students looking at me. How do you upload this video? And I'm not real savvy. I've never compressed a video or anything. And so I was terrified of that process. So I went step by step, made color copies for all the students. And they were like, oh, this is no big deal. Well, with Swivl, on the cloud part, it compresses everything for you. Our students get a Swivl account as soon as they get into our program. There's every assignment through their coursework. They have to record themselves, share with peers, share with their instructors, every observation. And so they're used to being in there and clipping videos already and bookmarking, tagging things. We have rubrics built in. So they're very used to all of that. So when it came time to do task 2, that was probably the easiest part. And just having received our first part of our first round of submission, there was rubric 11 was our highest scored rubric, actually. So I'm like, I owe that partly to having Swivl, and we have TK20 as our platform that we use to house everything edTPA in. So they work within TK20, uploading all documents and video, and then before transferring over to Pearson. But I was so excited that Swivl compressed their videos for them, and we didn't even have to go through that process. It was like a trim, download, upload, done. Very, very simple. So very appreciative of Swivl.
Mm. Well, that's really great to hear, and I'm super happy that the compression side worked for you as well as the trimming. Was that something that was like you already knew about the trimming side before, or the downloading side before starting the pilot program?
So we've never downloaded out of Swivl because it's in our MOU to not everything has to stay within Swivl,
Right.
because it's security protected with K-12 students. We got permission to download out of Swivl to upload it because it's going to another secure location from our platform to Pearson for certification. So this was our first time to ever download out of Swivl. I can say that. But trimming, no, we've had lots of trimming. They have to trim all the time to submit just a 10-minute clip of certain things for course assignments.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And then have either of you used the Swivl team platform before?
I don't think I did when I was uploading. Like I said, I was just given it by the librarian. So what I remember, I had the thing around my neck that had the audio, and I had this iPad set on the thing that followed me.
Right, yeah.
Just like I recorded a video like to the iPad, and then had to figure out how to like get it from there up. So what y'all are talking about sounds like the answer that I was looking for back then. So that sounds amazing.
Right. Yeah, no, the Swivl team platform is something that I think is, well, we had it available, but we've like recently been pushing it a lot more and like adding a lot more features. And so hopefully it'd be able to help future edTPA users as well, just like in general, even if they don't have it, the amazing support that Amy's been able to provide for her students. And so I actually wanted to touch on Swivl a little bit more. And And so you've already mentioned a lot, and I'm really I'm really grateful for that. But in what other ways do you think that Swivel's been able to like help you in the classroom or help the students in the classroom? Um, like what's if you've maybe been able to hear any feedback from the students or just from yourself hearing about how Swivel's been used, like could you tell me a little bit more about that?
One of the things that especially now, that's really helpful for our students. So even though the university is closed and students can't borrow the Swivl robot, they still have access to their Swivl accounts. And so they will, use it, now since they're doing virtual teaching. I've actually seen student videos of them, in their kitchens doing a science experiment in the Swivl app. And I mean, it doesn't get much better than that because they're using the technology in a way that best works for them, as opposed to saying, here's the rope. They tell you students will tell you what they need and what they don't need. And this is one way that they've, in my opinion, are problem solving about what their needs are as their needs are changing. And so I'm hoping that the students catch on to, that they have access to resources. And even though the resources don't look like they used to look, that they can get creative with them. And so, that I thought was really encouraging, for a student who, she's like, okay, guys, Google Classroom, remember the lesson that we did on taste and smell? And, she did a whole experiment. It was absolutely amazing in her kitchen in sweatpants. But,
That's really cool.
That's where we are right now. So that was encouraging.
I would just say from the teacher side of it, using it, I did a couple of practice lessons before I recorded my teaching segment for edTPA. And even in doing that, catching the conversations between students that I wouldn't have heard otherwise was a really cool thing. Because I only had one mic. I saw that now you can have up to 5 mics, which is amazing. But I would just take it off if I wasn't actively giving directions at the time and students were interacting with each other in an activity. I would leave my mic at a table grouping or something and walk around and help other students. But so the camera was focused on a group of students that I wasn't even necessarily with, even though you could see me in the background, and then be able to go back and watch that footage of the students actually talking to each other, not putting on a face for giving an answer to a teacher was really cool.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, no, definitely with the extra markers, I think that audio will be able to be picked up even more. So I actually wanted to transition back to edTPA focused a little bit more and ask a little bit about, so imagine if someone else would come into your role and were to pick up all the things that you've learned over the course of time that you've been a site coordinator, certification officer, or a student of the edTPA. What are some tips and tricks or some advice that you give to your successor, I guess, in the role that you're in?
I would just say, do it. Find a reason to use the equipment to go through the process, even if it wasn't for edTPA in itself, or even if it was. I started recording trainings for people who were overseas or for other, so as the edTPA coordinator, I would say you have to not only dig into the details, but be able to take a step back and look at it as a whole picture. You can't compartmentalize, in my opinion, edTPA. You can't do test 1, test 2, test 3, because test 1 and test 1 and test 3 actually go together. So, if you think linearly about it, you're not going to get the results that you want. They may be passing results, but they're not going to be the results that you want. And, really having and just, just thinking about how all the pieces work together. I mean, in my opinion, it's a big whole bunch of cogwheels, right, that you have to attend to, and some move faster than others, and some are more robust. And so that's what, you can't pick it apart. You have to look at it as a whole system and then recognize where all the nuts and bolts are. But if you try to just look at individual nuts and bolts, you're going to miss the whole thing.
Amen to that. Yes. That is like the number one thing that people will like email me from or leave comments on my YouTube channel from people that have either failed their first attempt or have submitted like a draft to their professors and have gotten like some sort of feedback. And it's like, okay, all I got to do is just film this lesson, and then I'm going to go, then I'll get to task 3 or whatever else. And it's like, that's why I had to break down those, the understanding rubric level progressions, because I could tell as I started to just do that work linearly, it's like, I can't, like, I need to know what the end goal is before I can like start any of this. So that, I think it's amazing advice. And then as far as practically in the classroom, for people who might not have such wonderful support as these two ladies, practice with the camera in the classroom, even if you don't have a program telling you you have to do it, because it's not only practice for you, but for your students to not do crazy things in front of the camera because it's new. And I mean, I taught 7th graders, so I mean, it was 2017. So I mean, they were like dabbing in front of the camera constantly the first time I had it up. I learned after my first trial that I needed to put like a sign on my door that said like filming in progress, don't come in, because I had students from like previous years that would walk by and open their door like, Miss Landrum. Oh. So just things that you figure out just by doing it and that your students get comfortable with is helpful, and you should do it even though it's going to be work. That would be a huge tip I would give.
Okay, thanks. And I was actually wondering, in terms of like the people that come to you in the comment section and stuff, what are some things that they find particularly helpful about the content that you're sharing?
I just think they benefit from hearing me explain what I have learned from breaking down the rubrics. A ton of people, and I honestly, I don't know how this is possible. I'm super thankful for the program I went through. But so many people are in a position where either edTPA becoming a requirement for state certification is such a new thing that they have either like already graduated but are now having to figure out how to do this on their own without the support of professors, or they're just in a school where it's also new for the program coordinator and they're all just kind of in this together, and they are given a handbook that's huge and they're like, I'm also just trying to student teach here, like what is going on? So just hearing me explain from my point of view as well, like what they're not looking for, I think is a huge one too, because like they're not trying to see you on a video like stand and give the best coolest Prezi presentation of your life. Like they want to see student interaction with the content you are teaching. And like that in and of itself can be like a really mind-blowing concept to a lot of people who are just like, I'm just trying to like make good lesson plans and, teach a good, lecture. That's not necessarily, it's not what they're trying to get. So that would be some of the things that I hear.
Thank you so much for sharing. And then Amy, is there any advice that you would give to your successor?
Well, since I'm a whole year into this, I would definitely go off of LaChan's advice that you just have to jump in and do it. I mean, we thought through it. We went to several prep trainings. We've done monthly webinars with TEA supporting us and everything. But there are so many resources out there and so many things coming across that it's hard to even figure out, oh, what is the best resource to use? And so it very much is just do it, just dive in. And I think that we student teach for a full year. And so with our elementary group, we had them do task 4 mathematics in the fall semester. And I think that we were kind of scared of that big bad handbook. And so we tried to hold their hand a little bit. And then we held the huge boot camps where we just walked them through. For elementary, we could focus more on the literacy since it's all the same. But when you're talking a secondary middle level, we're doing every content. So I can't talk content specifics. I can talk about what is the handbook, how is it laid out, what are some good resources for you to use. Like Shelby, I heard you talk about how you go through and like create the 3-pager. We've done very similar things to that. And so I think just having that boot camp, one of our biggest learning was that boot camp's coming first. They've got to get into that handbook and dive in and start dissecting it and making sense of it on their own is our big learning going forward. We will not hold them away from a handbook ever again. But yeah, just diving in and doing it. I think that's been our biggest thing. And along with the recording part, we do start recording even a year before they get near this process. But a big thing that they've learned is technology is not perfect. And we've really encouraged them, you have got to record from the time you start to the time you stop. Every time through edTPA, you need to check your video every day to make sure audio was good. And that way they know how to fix it or they can troubleshoot before the next day. So those have been some big learning as far as the recording part goes.
Yeah, thank you so much. And in terms of the resources that you talked about, I know you mentioned the handbook, but I was curious about what are some of the other resources that you thought were particularly useful in sort of learning about the edTPA process.
So for us, TEA has held monthly webinars and have had guest speakers. So we've just had a TEA support person and then different guest speakers from a variety of universities that have shared different resources that they've used. And it's pretty much like breaking down the rubrics, different types of checklists. I would have never known to have a writing day without attending these webinars. To actually I think we allowed our student teachers 4 hours out of the field to come in and work on task 1 through 3. They should have came with everything, but just to fine tune the commentary. And we also provided some support on each one of those writing days, just things to make them think or probe, make sure that they're checking, using those checklists, reading it to a peer to make sure that it makes sense or it has alignment, those types of things. But to pinpoint like one specific person or something for a resource, I can't really do that. We've had so many throughout our monthly webinars that started, I believe, like last May.
Oh, wow, thank you so much. And that's really cool to hear that there are these monthly webinars that are running, and like there's actually like a support community out there to help you throughout the process. So I want to just wrap things up. Actually, we've gone through a lot of the questions, and I think we've been able to get like a large amount of information in this particular webinar. I think a lot of people will be able to learn a lot. And so I'm really, really thankful for everybody coming and sharing your thoughts today about the edTPA. I now know that it's a whole process. It's not just the video submission that I should be focusing on. So thank you for that. I'm learning as well. So just to advertise a little bit about something we have coming up, given that right now a lot of people are interested in virtual and distance learning, we have every Wednesday a virtual and distance learning webinar series with our customer success team. It's not just about Swivl, but it's with Swivl, with us. And so you can join us on Wednesday, 10 a.m. PST, 1 p.m. EST, and we'll talk about Swivl and virtual learning and distance learning, and we'll bring some guests with us. So if you want to speak at one of these webinars, we're very welcome to have you come on board and share what you're doing at your school or share what your thoughts are. And finally, just to share a little bit more resources, you'll find the recording and the webinar, um, an article about the webinar at www.swivl.com/webinars. And I will definitely go ahead and ask our panelists for those resources that they referred to. For example, um, like Shelby's Teachers Pay Teachers, as well as their YouTube channel. And if those webinars that Amy was talking about are public, are they? I'm not sure. But just like mentioning those resources in that article so that future people can have access to them, like I'll be able to do that. And so go ahead and go to that link. If you have any more questions about teacher prep, you can go ahead and email teacherprep@swivl.com. And for any updates about Swivl in general, you can follow us on Twitter, and we'll be updating that. If you're having trouble with Swivl, we have also extended our support hours. And so we'll be helping out on the weekends as well, given that it's a tough situation right now, and we want to be available to everybody at all times. And so once again, I want to thank everybody for coming today. I've learned so much, and I'm sure that everybody who's watching this will have also learned so much. And I wanted just to give the time to you to just say any final thoughts that you have, or any final tips and advice, or just something that you want to share at the end.
I mean, I can. I think that, like I said, for New Jersey, it is a certification requirement. It is a lot of pressure on our students on their final semester when they're leaving. And one of the things that I try to express to them and impress upon them is that, yes, it is a lot, but these are skills that we want in front of students. And so recognizing that that is a decision that we know to be good for our students and our K-12 students, this is a professional learning opportunity. Like, this is the pathway into your profession. And I want a teacher for my children. I have 2 high schoolers. I want a teacher for my high schoolers who knows how to be reflective, who knows how to be considerate of them, who knows how to use data to analyze and make curricular choices and decisions, and knows how to communicate about that. So it's tough. It is tough. But in my opinion, it's worth it. So.
I agree. I was a better teacher for doing edTPA, 100%. It made me aware of things that I would not have normally focused on. And I think from then on out, the lessons that I created were far more student-centered. Coming from, both my parents were teachers growing up, so I had lots of, not necessarily old school teaching like ingrained in me, but just like very, like, in a school setting where kids love to come and sit and take notes and just listen to lectures and be there and be present. And, I thought I could be a good kind of teacher in that way, but learning how to be a good teacher in a student-centered way and having students engage with content, as well as like reflecting on all that, like LaChan was saying, and making those decisions about how I'm going to teach content, how students are going to engage with it, to actually learn it and not just regurgitate information to me. I was really thankful to go through the edTPA process for that.
I want to build off of both of you, because I think it is a big, scary process, especially for our students that are nearing graduation. But I think just encouraging them that they've gone through this teacher prep program, they're ready to do this, and having that encouragement. And LaChan, well said, like, I want a teacher that's able to go through edTPA at a proficient level or higher to be teaching my child. I think for us, we've really looked at it as this is going to push our program just to the next level, and our K-12 students deserve that kind of teacher in their classroom. And for us around here, since it is a pilot, I mean, I've really been talking to them about this is going to set you above your peers right now, because there is only like 10 or 12 programs out of the whole state of Texas that are doing the pilot right now. And so I do think that our graduates coming out for this year will stand out above their peers because they've gone through this rigorous program or process of doing it, and they're going to be able to talk to it. That commentary makes them not just be able to speak to it, but write to it, which is a whole nother level. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing, and thank you once again for joining me for this edTPA webinar. So I'll be closing the broadcast now, and I want to thank everybody for joining me today, and thank everybody for watching the broadcast. All right.